Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us tonight, once again, one of Macon's leading savants, all-around wise person, Dr. Buck Melton. Now, Buck, I don't know if you've extended all your cleverness ammunition in earlier shows, but do you have any important bit of wisdom to toss out before we start our discussion?
In our last discussion, I talked about beer, so I'll change slightly for this one and quote, I believe it was Dorothy Parker, I love a good martini, or maybe 2 at the most. 3, I'm under the table. 4, I'm under the host.
That was rather wicked. She was part of what's the name of that table?
Yes, the Algonquin Club.
Yes, yeah, right, in New York City.
Yes.
There's some wits and writers of age gone by.
Yes, I've stayed at the Algonquin once or twice, but unfortunately,
did you try and drink there as well?
I did not. I did not go to the. I forget the name of the table, but
right.
It was. But yeah, unfortunately, like most of the older, really ritzy New York hotels, the rooms tend to be rather small.
Yes.
So,
well. On that subject, well, we can talk about other things. There are lots of positive things going on in the world. Good, maybe we've got some cure for obesity. AI is out there going to revolutionize the world. Understanding is all these good things are out there.
Well, I would take issue with whether AI is good.
We'll move discussion. Along. Well, we'll move along.
Well,
I'll suggest that it could be. Maybe you'll accept the could, as you. It could be. What I want to say is, human progress is certainly out there. There are lots of really good things going on, and so we wouldn't be unduly pessimistic, but we've had discussions about the way our political system is working and the fragmentation of the country's sort of national psyche, if you wish to say that. And there are disputes that are taking place between the national government and the states, and sanctuary cities are out there. Well, laws don't apply here. It's almost a sense of chaos in some ways, which could lead to very dire outcomes, which some people predict. But do you have any? Maybe we could start the discussion with discussing the immigration crisis on the southwestern border and what Texas has tried to do, and the courts have set this aside. Or is it a state against the federal government? Or any comments about that?
Well, yes, and this is sort of a unique system or situation based on our unique history as having started as communities spread up and down the eastern seaboard in the 1600s that had very little exchange with each other and often had rather different values, and then gradually over a period of centuries morphing into a larger single community. And that led to sometimes very big tensions over whether the main power resided in a more or less local community or in a much larger community, that is a state government versus the federal government. And that, in fact, led to the biggest war we've had in our history, the U.S. Civil War. That it was a question of state sovereignty, which was provoked, of course, by the issue of slavery. And it's important to remember, I think you have grown up, I've grown up, everyone in living memory has grown up with a fundamentally stable political system. Now, sometimes that system has been unjust, especially to particular ethnic groups or what have you. But it's tended to correct itself and to correct itself in a non-revolutionary way. Maybe sometimes it's taken too long to reach the correction. But it does correct, it does straighten out. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. Well, maybe so or maybe not, but that seems to be our lived experience. And so we have forgotten that this country did at one time tear itself apart and kill about 2 or 3% of the population in a 4-year war. And it could happen again, and it might happen with this same showdown between the federal and state governments. If some regional area says, look, the federal government is shafting us and being completely irresponsible and throwing us under the bus, and we're mad as heck and not going to take it anymore.
Well, that's a really, if you just examine how terrible war is, there's nothing worse I could imagine. Well, maybe there is something worse, but just getting in some dispute in the city on the hill, that would be awful, and trying to make the system work. That should be what politicians do. They should be doing that. But I'll ask this question, is that a lot of the inflammatory events that are going on, people can, or manipulators of people, can capture different sentiments for their own self-interest. So if someone says, I don't know, people would like to ride bicycles, they don't get a chance to ride bicycles. And you could maybe start a bicycle company and do well. You pick that up, you could advertise, you could do this, you could do that. If you were a person interested in getting some power, or actually getting the money that comes from power, all the acolyte or attributes of money or power you could obtain if you captured the discontent of different groups in the country. And indeed, it's getting easier to do that, because we have one of the stories out there is for whatever reason, we want a lot of diversity, which is a big thing to say for the country. Why would you say that? Why would you like to have a lot of diversity in a country? What's the reason for that? And it's not really explored too much. It appears to me that you could make a case for diversity. Well, maybe you get new ideas, maybe you get different insights, maybe the way the world is, you've got these 8 billion people that are, and many of them are in isolated enclaves, and now we'll all sort of mix them together in the American blender, into the American stew, and out of that we'll have wisdom that other people would not have. So we can understand, let's say, Buddhism more than other people would, and we can rapidly surf the world for new ideas. Our doors are open for any new ideas that are going to be useful, maybe. That would be an argument for it. There are arguments for it. An argument against it would be that the way the brain is constructed, going back to that, or the idea of the selfish gene, that the general idea is that from the point of view of ethics, that your instinct is to like a person that looks like you, talks like you, seems to be similar to you, and be threatened by people that are not like that. And you could say that's a hardwired arrangement. I submit that it is. Now, it's overcome with lots of ways to overcome that, but there's a burden attached to that. But if you have a very diverse country with lots of different ideas, the idea that it's good to have a lot of diversity. On the other hand, if the different groups, if you formerly had, 3 or 4 large groups in the country, and now you have 10 or 20, and each group has its own viewpoints of what's fair and not fair, it certainly could spread into a bad situation, and particularly so if manipulators of the group's interests sees the issue. I mean, I don't know what could be a group. I don't know. We have people that are maybe they're Portuguese fishermen, like Captains Courageous. There's some Portuguese fishermen that are great people, and they live on the Cape, or they're up in New England, and they go out and fish the banks and catch cod. But maybe that group is something is amiss with whatever their world is, and their representatives are causing all kinds of issues. And many groups are like that. It's a particular difficulty. Also, as just the makeup of the country changes so rapidly, all of those things seem to be kind of kindling temperature, I guess, for some kind of conflagration. I mean, do you have any thoughts about that? I mean, what can we do to cool things out? I mean, that's my comment.
Well,
no, the last thing we won't even contemplate is any kind of a civil war. That would just be the worst possible outcome, and I don't even like to mention it. So I certainly don't expect anything like that to happen.
Well, you say you don't expect it, but that's what I'm saying. That I don't think the people in 1850 or 1855 expected it either. That I think we have a real possibility. Now, will it look like North versus South and blue versus gray? Absolutely not. In a way, I think it will be worse. The destructive power of weapons is greater now, and it won't strictly be based on geography, as it was in the Civil War, that you had a block of southern states. They were very defensive and afraid that their slaves were going to be taken away. Slavery was limited to that area largely because of geography and climate. But today, the different ethnicities, the different ideologies, the different economies are largely much more intermixed, and that therefore it would be more like street fighting and small unit actions. It would be far more chaotic to the extent that one war can be more chaotic than another. And I think the important thing is not to dismiss it and not to say, well, I don't think it'll happen, I don't think it'll come to that, this is America. I think it is crucially important to say, yes, our level of intolerance is becoming so great, and we are denouncing the other side as un-American. We are starting to doubt the legitimacy of the political system. Let me throw that in too. That this is a perfect storm for a civil war. So I think we need to accept at least the theoretical possibility of it if we're to head it out. We use this word diversity, and I think that this is an unfortunate word. I think the people who use it haven't really stopped to think about what it means and what its implications are, and maybe they don't even mean diversity at all. I think the better word would be tolerance. In my personal experience, and of course this is anecdotal, it's a group that is down and out and oppressed that will say we want diversity as a code word for saying we want a place at the table. And then once they get the place at the table, these groups will often pull a gun and shoot everybody else at the table, and then they become the oppressors, and there is an official party line that must be towed. So the better word is tolerance, to learn how to live with and put up with and make deals with groups that do have fundamentally different values from yours without pulling that metaphorical or literal gun.
Well, in our conversations, I hope I'm restrained about the praise I toss in your direction, but I think this was a three-pointer. It's a really hook shot from midcourt. Tolerance is certainly, I really like that. It immediately appeals to me. And of course, one of the things that goes on with morality, it is the weapon of the weak, if you want to say that. And then once they are no longer weak, they discard that very quickly. I mean, many examples of that in history. Well, I'll make a few comments. If we have what is it that we could make things what's dangerous, and what can we do to make things more peaceful? I was thinking about the American Civil War and the president that was there directly before Lincoln came in, and was that Buchanan? Did I get the right guy?
Correct, very good.
Right, and I won't get into what people now say about him, but he was certainly not a extraordinary figure that had the ability to cool the savage passions that were there. So if a president is in there, if we had these tensions that happen, a really weak leader would be an issue. And I guess the other point is if you had an inflammatory leader, that might things worse. So we have a weak leader and an inflammatory. I'll let it go with that. But leadership is an important issue to try and make things peaceful. The idea of tolerance is a huge, big way to sail the ship. And also, I've said this before, self-confidence on our institutions. What we have here is unexcelled. Let's not throw it in the garbage can. Let's keep our passions aside. Let's try and be reasonable with each other. That's what politicians should do. Now, having said that, the other thing that concerns me is what is it that really, if we have a lot of contentious groups, we have the diversity has put together, I don't know, 30 or 40 groups of people that are loggerheads with each other. What is it that's going to really trigger difficulties? And I think it's money. So if, in fact, this worries me a substantial amount, the way the national debt has run up and the interest payments that are out there, the fact that we have the dollar is the world's currency reserve, we got all this power, we keep running debt up, there's reluctance to raise taxes, and there's the idea of income redistribution is just ingrained in the system. So if you're a politician and you want to be reelected, you give something to your constituents. So you could give them more, I don't know, whatever, more something, more free of this, more free of that, more this, more of that.
It's called pork.
Yes, we could do all that. And then contrary-wise, on the other side, we could say to my group, maybe I'll pretend I'm a Republican on this issue, well, we're going to have low taxes, and also we're going to give you $800 million to put a new factory in Locust Grove, Georgia, or whatever. We'll just pass all these goodies out, and each side does that. And the economic reality is going to hit. And you could go through there are many reasons the Roman Empire collapsed. I mean, and one of them might be their inability to support their armies, particularly after the 4th century, jumping around with the Persians. They, these long contentious relationships. They spent a lot of money on defense. They had bread and games for the people in Rome. They did this, they did that, and they debased their currency. And at least one, there are many theories about this, but one was their economic circumstances. They could not produce, the system could not produce an adequate amount of money to fly the airplane. So that could certainly be a huge issue.
Well, I would add as a corollary to that, the gap in income in America now between the very rich and even median income is, I think, greater by far than it's ever been before. And people are just starting to see this as fundamentally unequitable. And you have to take account of that as well. So, but yeah, and this goes back to what we were talking about in a previous episode, a constitutional amendment to balance the budget and get this spending under control. It is not only unsustainable, I think we are past any reasonable point. And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about this debt that is just growing astronomically. Yes, might we be nuked? Might we be subjected to bio-war or to chemical warfare? Yes, but these things might or might not happen. But what is absolutely certain is economic collapse if we do not deal with this national debt.
And just to continue on that subject, you mentioned inequality, and so the different groups are out there, and one group is aggrieved or whatever, and the system is not giving our group whatever they deserve, and we want to take resources from another group, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, we get into a complicated story about wealth, property, and shall I say, Marx. I mean, certainly the last century this was pointed out. And how do you control people so they can all live together? Maybe that control's a rough word, but the economic system will make you go to work. It'll make you try and, I don't know, not spend too much money on gasoline or do it. It's a very powerful incentive to people to go to work every day, I guess you'd say that. And if in fact the system has been put together where people that possess property of whatever it is, and going back to the Marx and whatever economic stories about the Communist Manifesto, sundry issues like that, which that whole idea fell in the dustbin of history. But let that go. But I mean, at least some of the ideas are worth talking about.
Yes,
and,
I'll call you on that one. I'm certainly not a Marxist. Because unlike Marx, I do not believe in the perfectibility of human nature. Quite the opposite.
That's where they fell. That's where they fell down.
Yes, and that's a problem. And I've learned a great deal from you about the reptile brain. I've incorporated in a lot of my classes.
Right.
So in terms of the cure, I'm absolutely not a Marxist. But it just seems to me that his description of the disease, I find it more appealing every day. That if the very wealthy and the great benefactors in our society do not use that wealth wisely for the good of the community, they are going to be subjected to some sort of revolution, whether it's good or not. And if you want to say, well, in a good Ayn Rand sense, that this puts the small group of really smart, really capable people makes them hostages to the great mass of the lumpen. It may be sad, but it's also true. It may be unjust, but it is still nevertheless true.
Well, it's such a deep conversation to get into, but I think talking about civil war, talking about what's up, and talking about an impending economic crisis. So what shape will that take? And so if the crisis happens, there'll be some groups that are injured more than others. And my point would be people with property are going to be protected. Well, let's say rampant inflation, the value will go up. Where the people are really going to be injured a lot are going to be people that depend on their employment. They're not going to be able to, I don't know, whatever, if they own 10 gas stations, make some more money by increasing, or whatever they do here. They won't be able to do that. They depend on their paycheck that comes in, and in general, that doesn't keep track with rampant inflation. So if in fact this economic crisis plays itself out, that should add gasoline to these to contentious situations out there. I will also say this: one of the things that happens just in regards to groups and property, whatever. So people that are coming across the border there, millions of 10 million or whatever, huge numbers of people, are generally, they just don't possess much property. Additionally, for many reasons, many groups in the country, for ethnicity, and you could say for historical reasons, they don't possess much property. And the government has tried to do something about that. I think the 2007 crisis that happened, we're going to make everybody a homeowner. We're trying to do something to give people property. That didn't work out. And so we have this issue about what are you going to do about wealth in a time of warfare and trouble. And so you mentioned civil war. Well, there can be ethnicity civil war, and there can also be class war, if you want to say it that way. Poor people can do this or whatever. And the other point is, wealth is often in the hands of old people. So there's also an age issue here. So a young person that's maybe just starting a family, trying to make it, then I don't know, there's not enough money to pay for food. And then the old guy it's in retirement, he's got
Goodbye, Granny.
Well, yeah, a little bit. Well, okay, and so the system might work more for older people and the family. You get into the situation where, how are we going to make this work? Well, all the power for economic arrangements are centered in Washington. How is this system going to handle an economic crisis with all the tensions that are there? And unless it is well done, I think it'll be a very provocative situation.
And I must once again put in another science fiction plug here. One of the better known movies. It's not a great movie, but it certainly got some attention in 1976, based on a book a few years earlier. So if you think about it, it's coming out of the youth movement of Vietnam and this protest that the old dudes in Washington are making us 18-year-olds go out and kill our brothers in Southeast Asia. Out of this came the novel Logan's Run.
Yes.
And you probably know this, but the
yes.
movie was very famous, and it was set in the 23rd century. In the movie, death was obligatory at age 30. In the novel, it was obligatory at age 21.
Oh, really?
Yes, so that would prevent this accumulation of power and wealth on the part of the old people, because you can't get old. Yes, as they say in the world of the 23rd century, the only thing you can't have is your 30th birthday.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is that right? I see. That's
but it's worth pondering.
Well, I mean, yes. So we're bringing all these fault lines that are present, and really, what we'd like to do is to have some kind of commonality. And I think one, what at least traditionally would be religion. And it's not fashionable to call this a Christian country anymore. I mean, you put you in prison if you use that word. But that was a great unifying factor. If you look at the country and having a sort of a homogeneous, that's another wicked word that in a way could would make things good.
Yes.
And to some degree, at least an ethical system, or
well, the notion of the salutary law, true or not, it binds us together. And I think, and of course, the Democrats, talking about throwing gasoline on the fire, the Democrats have been using the N word, that is Nazi, for MAGA and Trump since before he was elected. As a matter of fact, I think Nancy Pelosi was very irresponsible using the word Nazi for some Republicans as late as 20 years ago, and I think that that's just inexcusable. Now, that being said, there are some increasingly disturbing parallels between the Trump movement and the Nazi movement, that when resources get scarce, when times get hard, when traditional accepted mores start to get undercut, people get scared, and scared people get angry. And this anger is often expressed as a fear of the other, and the other is usually going to be ethnic or racial. And so hence the call for racial purity in Nazi Germany. Now, we haven't called for any pogroms in this country yet. I suppose there's some Klansmen out there who would be happy about it, but we haven't called for pogroms, we haven't called for anything like that. But the idea of limiting illegal immigration it pretty clearly taps into that. And there's some validity there, because it is illegal immigration, despite the mainstream media's desire to call them undocumented immigrant. They're here illegally. I'm sorry, they are.
And they've broken the law.
They've broken the law. So that makes them a, dare I say, legitimate target for the same type of rhetoric which in Nazi Germany would have been much more overtly racist and condemning. So.
Well, I won't ever, it's really a complicated story. I'll just we're near the end of our conversation. But one of the, one of the things to consider is the fact that I wanted to praise the country, how great it is to be here. Any human being that knows anywhere else, maybe it's great to be in Switzerland and ski, and if you got $1 trillion, well, maybe there are some places that are good. But this is unquestionably the very best place in the world, that's my opinion. And people know it, and there are 8 billion people out there, and so there's a tremendous, almost physical desire to be here. And the people that come, millions and millions and millions of people would come here. Whoever could come here. The same in going into Europe. It's a similar situation, and one can understand it. And so I think our nation state needs, as it examines its problems, it has an interconnection with all the world's problems. And so solving one will require solving another. So if we say, well, we don't like this being mean to anyone, including illegal immigrants, but can we fix the economy in Guatemala? Can we do anything? Do we have the power to do that? What about the birth rates there? There's tremendous birth rates up there. It really get into a whole host of problems that I think require a world solution. Now, that's far past our initial discussion points. But on that note, Buck, it's been once again a pleasure having you here, and I like those scientific or science fiction references.
I'll keep them coming.
Yeah, good.
More
good.
germane than ever.
Good. Well,
right.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Sir.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.